Traces of the Black Mage. With most of his power regained, the demon decided to follow the lead he had obtained from Von Leon and investigate the Temple of Time. He was hopeful for some meaningful answers, as the Temple of Time had once been the Black Mage's stronghold, and the place where he had once been sealed away. Before he headed out, Mastema asked him to obtain an hourglass of time during his mission, which had the power to transform one's appearance into what they looked like in the past. The demon arrived at the Temple of Time and entered through the gate of the past. He continued onward until he encountered a hooded demon, who told him that he had been waiting, adding that he was honored that the demon had come all the way just for him. The demon asked the commander who he was, to which he told the demon that he would find out some day. He added that for now, he had something to give him. He then passed on a locket, which the demon recognized as his own locket, and held a photo of his mother and Damien. Author's note: the locket fell out of the demon's pocket during his battle with the Black Mage centuries ago. Damien likely found it in the Black Mage's throne room after the seal broke. The commander explained that he had felt as though he ought to give it back to and told him to be careful not to lose the locket or their memories. The demon asked the commander why he had the locket to begin with, but the commander chose to ignore the question and instead promised him that they would see each other again before disappearing. Frustrated, the demon decided to return to Edelstein, though he made sure to first obtain an hourglass of time for Mastema. Back at the secret plaza, he gave the hourglass to Mastema, who used it to successfully revert her appearance back to her demon form. Mastema then took the chance to confess her true feelings to the demon, but just as she said the words, "I love," the magic of the hourglass wore off, and she returned back to her cat form. The demon then asked her to continue, but Mastema lost her nerve and instead told him that she meant to say that she loved fighting on the side of good. The demon agreed and told her that fighting the Black Mage gave him a new appreciation for Maple World, adding that he believed that they were doing the right thing. Author's note: I hope that Mastema one day has the courage to finally confess, although I don't know how much good it'll do her if she's stuck as a cat. The writers haphazardly rushed through giving a conclusion to the Maple World classes in the Aftermath cutscene, and unfortunately, Mastema returning to her demon form wasn't covered. Meanwhile, Angelic Buster continued to explore Maple World and collected essence stones from drakes, wild cargos, lioners, star pixies, and white fangs, much to Escalade's delight. Author's note: there's literally no lore point to these quests besides giving you your emblem, but since I guess they technically happened, I'll still include them. I realize that this section is called Traces of the Black Mage, but since there's nowhere else to keep these quests, I just decided to dump them here, even though they have nothing to do with the Black Mage. Soon after, Neinhardt reached out to Kaiser and told him that the Alliance had discovered the Black Mage's laboratory in Magatia. Author's note: the Black Mage's laboratory was retconned to be the same laboratory that you enter at the end of the Magatia town storyline. In the town quest, the laboratory was said to have belonged to the Black Mage, an evil wizard who had ruled Assyria for hundreds of years. When the writers began developing the main plot with the release of Iran, they adapted the story of the Black Magician into the character that we know as the Black Mage today. Neidhart explained that the Alliance had found several interesting documents, and though he had already sent copies to the Nova, he wanted to show one particular document to Kaiser directly. After receiving the documents, Kaiser reviewed them and found new information on the Transcendence. He read that the Black Mage had cut off a part of himself that he was imbued with light, or that was imbued with light, and that he had embraced the darkness, putting him at odds with Rhine and the World Tree. Kaiser was pleased to note that according to the documents, the Black Mage didn't know the location or the identity of the World Tree. However, he realized that the Black Mage's attempt to seal the Transcendent of Time's power was similar to how Darmor had stolen the powers of Chronica. Author's note: most likely these documents were written very soon after he awakened as the Transcendent of Light, probably while he was formulating his plan to destroy the Transcendence. At the time of writing these documents, he probably didn't know who or where Alicia was. Later on, we learned that Neidhart ordered a more thorough investigation of the laboratory after the events of Black Heaven, which is when the Alliance found dozens of prophecies that foretold the events of major incidents like Black Heaven, Heroes of Maple, Esfera, and Tenebris. It's highly likely that the laboratory was where the Black Mage mapped out the path of destiny. His ability to see the future is somewhat distinct from most characters in the game. Characters like Cygnus and the Shamaness of Aswan receive symbolic visions that they have to interpret, such as how Cygnus's vision of Black Heaven was birds of light that fought against a great darkness. In contrast, from the way the game describes the Black Mage's abilities, it seems like he has little to no real precognitive skills. It's more like that he's instead used complex mathematical formulas. His innate genius level intelligence and his enhanced power as a transcendent to manually chart out every single possible future based on every single relevant variable. In Limina, Grendel mentions that the future is so incomprehensibly vast that mortals are physically incapable of perceiving it, aside from small fragments. However, it would make sense that a transcendent and particularly only someone with an IQ as high as the Black Mage would have the ability to perceive an infinite number of futures and to manipulate them. Because of this, the Black Mage's prophecies are less his interpretations of the future visions and more just the events that he had already decided would happen. On top of that, his prophecies themselves were also part of his plan, and he purposely left them behind so that the Alliance would discover them and know their destiny was predetermined. He also left behind one particular sentence that would clue Cygnus and Neinhardt in on realizing the importance of the adversary at the time of Esfera, which would be the basis of their entire operational strategy in Tenebris. Only the adversary can counter immortality's fate with the strength of a seal stone. Kaiser returned to Pantheon and discussed the documents with Fennel. She noted that the main takeaway was how something strange seemed to happen when Transcendents used each other's powers, as Darmor's use of Chronica's powers had resulted in several interdimensional portals appearing all across Grandis. She also noted that Magnus had disappeared from Mapleworld after the Black Mage had taken Rhine's power. Kaiser asked if it meant that the interdimensional portals appeared when other Transcendents used the power of the Transcendent of Time. Fennel replied that it seemed to be the case and conjectured that Magnus had returned to Grandis when the Black Mage had used Rhine's power, which may have accounted for the time gap between him leaving Mapleworld and arriving on Grandis. Author's note: Kaiser and Angelic Buster's storylines laid the groundwork for the lore on Transcendence and suggested that interdimensional portals only appear when a Transcendent of Time's power is stolen. However, all future mentions of the topic state that it's the result of taking any Transcendence power, not necessarily the Transcendent of Times. Kaiser then pointed out that the interdimensional portal on Mapleworld had just been discovered recently. Fennel reasoned that the power of time had likely been sealed away along with the Black Mage. Just then, she realized that the interdimensional portal appearing meant that the seal on the Black Mage must have been broken, allowing for the power of time to form the interdimensional portal once again. Fennel told Kaiser and the Alliance that the Alliance needed to be informed immediately and warned him that with Mapleworld facing the return of their biggest threat, and with the Nova preparing to launch their attack on Magnus, the situation had gotten much more serious. Author's note: the interdimensional portal was introduced in the game during the Tempest patch, which also released Luminous, Kaiser, and Angelic Buster. These three class storylines were written with the intention that they interconnected, as Luminous's final quest involves him meeting the Black Mage shortly after the seal breaks, which is meant to coincide with the Nova realizing the significance of the portals appearing. While the writers may have intended for game updates to correspond to the progress of the in-game timeline, I found that this doesn't hold up when I tried piecing together the chronology of the game. Similar to how higher level content doesn't necessarily take place after lower level content, because of the constant retcons and continuity errors that get introduced in later updates, the chronology gets all jumbled up and it was honestly a nightmare trying to reconcile all the little details and plot holes while making this site. In the case of the interdimensional portal's appearance, the Explorer storyline and Xenon storylines are both set before the Black Mage's seal is broken, but the portal already exists at that time. Now, rather than the portal's appearance meaning that the seal has been broken, it's essentially been retconned to mean that the seal has seriously weakened. Because of this, it now feels odd for the Nova to act like they've stumbled onto some sort of revelation when the Black Mage has already been freed for a long time now. The Black Heaven storyline showed that the Alliance was keeping news of the Black Mage's return secret from the rest of the world, even though there were plenty of rumors going around about it. I like to headcanon that since the Alliance was officially keeping silent on the matter, and since the Nova likely wouldn't have heard the rumors when they're based in Grandis, they probably never heard the news, and so they must have thought that they were the first people to figure it out. Soon after, Neidhart contacted Angelic Buster and explained that at Kaiser's request, he was giving her the report that the Alliance had compiled on the Black Mage's laboratory in Megatia. Angelic Buster read through the report, found that she was confused by some of the details. She asked Escalade why the Overseers allowed people like the Black Mage and Gerard Darmore to become Transcendents in the first place. Escalade explained that the Transcendents didn't have to be good, but rather, they simply needed to bring balance to the domain that they ruled. As an example, he cited the Black Mage and explained that he was fated to be defeated, which would allow for the light to equalize itself. Author's note: this explains why Luminous didn't awaken as the new Transcendent of Life, or Light, after the Black Mage's death, as a Transcendent only awakens in response to a great imbalance of their domain. There would be no reason for Luminous to awaken when the light had just equalized itself. This would also explain the absence of a Transcendent of Light in Maple World prior to the White Mage. Mortal Transcendents reincarnate upon death, and so it's likely that the White Mage's past lives had the potential to awaken, but since the balance of light hadn't fallen out of balance, they just kept reincarnating without ever becoming a Transcendent. After the fusion of Mapleworld and Grandis, Tana satisfies the requirements for a Transcendent of Light, and so it's highly unlikely that Luminous will ever awaken. Angelic Buster then asked why the Transcendents needed to get involved to begin with. Escalade explained that Transcendents could be either immortal or mortal, but they were mandated to maintain the balance. Should one of the three domains begin to falter, so would the Transcendent that watched over it. Angelic Buster asked if that was why Darmore had awakened as the Transcendent of Life during the Flora Civil War, but Escalade replied that he didn't know who Darmore was, as he only had knowledge of events that had occurred before he had become trapped inside the relic. Author's note: I've been told that Escalade in MapleStory M is basically a giant nerd who gets really excited over research and stuff, similar to how he behaves here. If they revamp Angelic Buster's storyline, I'd really appreciate if they could change his personality to be more like that, so that I don't feel the urge to commit homicide whenever he opens his mouth. Angelic Buster then showed him the report that Kaiser had written up, which Escalade found it interesting. He told her that the main takeaway from the report was that the Transcendents had a fascination for each other's powers, which explained why Darmore and the Black Mage had stolen the powers of their respective Transcendent of Time. Author's note: this has been somewhat soft retconned. While it hasn't been strictly disproved, the Black Mage's motivations for stealing Ryan's powers were part of his master plan to destroy all of the Transcendents, rather than because he coveted her powers. And I suspect that Darmore is much in the same boat. Angelic Buster then remembered Beldar's explanation on how the interdimensional portals began to appear after Darmore had used Chronica's powers. Escalade told her that when a Transcendent used another's powers, There would be some sort of negative side effect, which would range between something simple like a physical backlash to something as severe as a disruption of the space time continuum. Escalade told her that they would need to seek out the World Tree, or Aona, in order to use their transcendent powers against both the new Black Mage and Darmor, and explained that according to legend, Aona was said to live in the Sanctum of Light, a place where only light could reach. Soon after, Tyr collected more Essence Stones from Triple Rumos, Neo-Huroids, Chow, and Aphenia, finally satisfying Escalade's appetite. Author's note: while you need to kill Chow and Aphenia to get these stones, her killing them would contradict with the Ellen Forest storyline, and so you can assume that she's obtained the stones without killing either of them. Escalade also gives you an emblem at the end of this questline. Meanwhile, Ark received a letter from Francis, who invited him to join the Blackwings. Ark went to meet him at the Vern Mines and asked him how many others he had sent the invitations to. Francis explained that he had only asked him and another girl with pink pigtails, though he regretted that the alliance had gotten to her first. Ark then hit Francis, explaining that something had instinctively made him do it, and refused Francis's offer. Author's note: Ark gets a medal for being the last class to canonically hit Francis in the class storyline. Just like with Angelic Buster, it's only said in the dialogue that he hits Francis, rather than us actually fighting him. As he left the Vern mine, Ark noted to himself that Francis didn't seem truly evil, and hoped that he would one day change. Just then, he met Angelic Buster, whom he recognized as the same girl that Francis had described. After exchanging greetings, she gave him a report from Kaiser that detailed Maple World's transcendence. Ark read through the report and learned that the Black Mage had stolen the Transcendent of Time's powers, resulting in the creation of the interdimensional portal. Ark realized that the portal's appearance meant that the Black Mage's seal was weakening. Author's note: this is a continuity error. Grandis class storylines were initially set before the seal breaking, but the Explorer revamp ruined everything. He also read that the Transcendents who stole another's power were weakened. He realized that Darmor must have known the risks, which made his decision to steal Chronica's power even more confusing. He then wondered if Darmor was planning to invade Mapleworld during the time of peace with the stolen power of time. Author's note: this also happened to the Black Mage, who spent years recovering his full strength while trapped in the seal. It says a lot about the Black Mage's strength when the heroes couldn't even beat him centuries ago when he was at a fraction of his full power. In contrast, it says a lot about how strong we are to beat the Black Mage at twice his original strength in Limina.